My image defines my worth.
I must stay positive.
I'm fine.
No one cares.
I am unlovable.
I must do it
My
alone.
story isn't important.
It's okay to be honest. I am enough.
Somebody cares.
I do not have to do this alone.
I am imperfectly perfect.
My beauty comes from within.
My voice matters.
I am loved. It's okay to not be okay.
My story has value.
Everybody, welcome to day 10, our 10th conversation of 10 for 10. And today, we're going to have a conversation around the lie that we believe or tell ourselves that my story isn't important. And I think throughout these past days, throughout these conversations that we've had, really we're sharing parts of who we are, parts of our story, right? And we're hearing them from fellow peers, fellow youth from community or across the country, wherever you're listening to this. And so the reality is that even in something positive like this, we can receive this, see this on a church website or on YouTube or something and be like, oh, well, their story is important, but I don't know about mine. And I think we all can kind of feel that way sometimes too. So yeah, let's dig in. What's the idea of like this lie that we tell ourselves that our story isn't important?
That I think one of the lies that we tell ourselves about our story isn't important is that I remember talking about it later, but we're the side characters. We're not the side characters. We're the heroes of our own story.
Yeah, like this idea that like this our story is our story, right? It includes other people, but it's still us bringing who we are out into the world, and finding value in that.
Yeah. I think it matters who you are, right, at heart, right? You have to find yourself, which is most important, because like if you think of yourself as like, oh, I'm just a side character, like going back to that, that's not a good positive mindset, as we talked about earlier. But I think it's important to find yourself because that's a defining trait of who you are, and that single-handedly proves that you're not a side character, right? Like if you have feelings, emotions, a story of your own, if you look back, yeah, I think that is very powerful.
Yeah, that also is making me think of, I don't remember I heard this. I don't remember who said it. But I remember it kind of stuck with me that how we all have people that we like look up to that really like make our days good. And I think you got to remember that like you are that person for other people and you don't even know it. So you could walk into a room and be like, oh, like nobody likes me. My story's not important. But for all you know, you could be the light in somebody's life when you walk into the room. That could make their day better. I think that's a good perspective to take through life.
And this is kind of funny, but I was just thinking a little bit about a couple weeks ago, me and my mom were at Target, and we saw a pillow that said, no bad days, no bad days, no bad days. And we were like, like, I guess, but like, it's okay to have bad days. But you kind of, sometimes I like to think about my life kind of like as a book. And like the character has bad days, and that is okay. That's what makes the story interesting. That's what makes the story worthwhile. But then they get up from that, and then they also have good days. So it's okay to have bad days, but just know that good days are coming too. Yeah,
I like that. And I think when you were talking about like your life as a book, I will be honest, I wish I read more than I did, but I'll say I'm more of a movie guy. But I think even then, like you think of characters in a movie, ones that would be seen as like extras. Like if you think about it, if you really boil it down, like that is a huge part of the movie and what that adds to the movie. And that person that's an extra in this movie that is, spotlighting Thor or something, like these other people that are extras in this movie, like they have their own story that, maybe won't become like a movie in Hollywood, but like that extra has a story too, and the person that's playing that role has a story too. And I think like in our lives, to Nick's point, like when you walk in to a room, like someone is looking up to you, and not to see that as pressure, but as value, a reminder of that you are in that story for that person.
Yeah, I think it's kind of like God is like the director of the movie, and he's putting you in there as an extra, and you have your own details, but you make the movie a better place, referencing a movie to a world, but you make it better by just being there. You have your own story. There's no main characters. You have your own story and you are there.
I love that so much, Liam. Really.
Yeah, I think on the flip side of what Jay said, not only can you be the main character in your own story, you can also be a side character in somebody else's. You can help them through their story. And that comes with having pride in your own story or your own life, and then supporting them throughout their story. Like Andy and Woody are two separate main characters in a good movie, and they supported each other. One would not be without the other.
Right.
I think a lot of the time people don't realize how much of an impact they can have on people. Because there's been days for me, and I think for everyone, where like someone just holding the door or smiling or just like just being a happy person that day that doesn't get on your nerves or whatever. It can like actually really like help, and it can kind of change the course of your day, change the course of your week. And I think it's hard for you, being the person that helped them, to see that, because a lot of the times it's actually not a big gesture. It's a smaller thing, but I think it's important to just know that I'm helping people, even if I'm not like this big person yet.
Yeah. I think that it's important, to know that people are there for you too, but not only that they're there for you, but you're there for them, and that your story doesn't also necessarily have to end, right? Or it's not fixed in one point, right? Like, you can change it. You're like the author of your own book, right? So you can read it, you can write it, you can change it, right? Like, that's what matters. And it's also important to note that, like, with that, you have to be careful, right? Because you do have an impact on people, right? So, like, you have to understand that, you can make someone feel differently, right? So you have to, like, take that power cautiously, I feel. But it's also good to know that, you can take that wherever you want.
Yeah, I just read the other day that you are responsible for the things you do, but you're also responsible for the things you don't do. And just knowing that, like, again, not as another way to, like, put pressure and responsibilities on yourself, but as, like, perspective of it actually adds to the worth and value of our story, right? That it's not, we are the main character in our own story, but it's also not just about us. It's about our relationship, our kind of co-living, going through this human experience with others, right? And that actually adds value to it. That responsibility to one another actually adds value to our story and who we are.
Yeah, and I know a lot of people that struggle with like suicidal thoughts or suicide have like, it's a real struggle to find that my story matters, I personally have struggled with that. I think it's really hard to find that light, but trying to understand that, I think we've been kind of touching on that, like your footprint that everybody makes that you don't even know, the people you touch. And that's just something to remember, you're there for people and you don't even know it. And sometimes you'll never know it. But just keep that in mind, keep pushing because people need you.
Yeah. And with that, I think this is so important that this is the 10th day, I think, and to hear that on the 10th day. But what I don't want this to do is be the 10th day, and this is where it ends. To Ian's point, the story, it hasn't ended yet. And reality is, thank God for that, right? We are all here. We are all here with each other. Those that are in front of the camera, behind the camera, watching this now or 2 years from now, we're still here. This story hasn't ended, because your story has worth. Your life has worth. You don't always have to be perfect. It's okay to not be okay. All of these things add up into our story and who we are. And so my hope is that this conversation really is a part of that chapter, of that story. That this conversation, all of these conversations help us, whoever we are, and again, in front of camera, behind camera, wherever it is, that these conversations help write the next chapters, and not just become one of the chapters in our book, but actually help influence the next ones that are written. And so that's my hope for each of you. I want to personally thank everybody who's been a part of these conversations, and ask that we keep these going, that this is not just the end of a 10-day thing. That I think it's okay that we're proud that we get to be a part of these conversations, but that it's the beginning of many more. That story continues to be written. So thank you. Everybody, today we were able to be a part of and listen to this conversation around this lie that we tell ourselves, that our story isn't important. And really, all of these topics, there's so many other topics for why this is so important to talk about, why we talk about mental health. But it's driven by the answer to this lie. It's that your story has value. And as I look directly into this camera, whether I've met you 1,000 times or I've never met you before, I'm telling you with full confidence, your story has value. And because you and your story hold so much value, that is why we have these conversations. That is why we spend all of these 10 days having these conversations, breaking this silence, and reminding each other and ourselves that we're not in this alone. Because your story has value, my story has value, and people that we will continue to meet have value. May this be the beginning of the conversations, not the end of something. That these 10 days may help us work together to continue to break down these lies and to stop the silence around mental health and mental wellness conversations. Thank you for starting these conversations with us. May we work hand in hand to continue them wherever we may go, because the stories have value and you have value.